BabyBus.
The Frog Prince.
Daddy, I'm going out to play.
Every evening, the princess went out to play with her favorite golden ball. It was a big golden ball, round and shiny. The princess loved tossing it into the sky, then catching it when it came down. The princess went through the forest, then came to a halt under a big banyan tree.
It's so cool here. And hey, there's a small pond. I'll go there and play with my golden ball.
The princess sat down next to the little pond, where she took out her ball and started to play. She threw it high into the air, then caught it over and over again.
1, 2, 3, throw! Whoa! I got it! 1, 2, 3, throw! Wow! So high, and I got it!
Amused, the princess giggled.
This time, I'll throw it higher than ever!
As the princess threw the ball high into the air, a pesky little fly buzzed onto her nose.
Pesky fly? Go away, go!
The princess reached out to chase the fly away. She was so distracted by the pesky fly that she forgot all about the ball. The golden ball fell to the ground and bounced into the small pond with a boing. The princess cried out as she watched the golden ball disappear into the pond. An odd sound suddenly came out of the pond.
Rabbit, rabbit. Princess, what's wrong? Why are you crying?
The princess looked around, trying to figure out where the voice was coming from. A fat green head emerged from the pond. It was a big, ugly frog.
I dropped my golden ball into the pond. Can you help me?
The princess wiped her tears and looked at the frog. The frog leapt out of the pond and hopped over to the princess.
Rabbit, rabbit. I can help you get the golden ball out of the pond. What will you give me in return?
The princess said happily.
I'll give you anything you want. Pearls or gems, even the crown on my head. Just help me get my golden ball out of the pond.
The frog shook his head like a rattle.
Princess, I don't want any gems or pearls or even a crown. I just want you to promise me one thing.
Tell me! Just tell me what you want, and I'll promise I'll give you anything.
Well, I want to be good friends with you. Let me play games with you, and let me eat at the palace. I want to enjoy good food from golden plates and drink juice from beautiful goblets. And I want to sleep in a big, comfortable bed. If you promise me that, I'll jump into the water and help you get the golden ball.
The princess said to herself,
I don't really want to be friends with an ugly frog, but I'll go ahead and agree to his request so I can get my golden ball back.
The princess nodded to the frog and said,
I promise I'll give you everything you asked for.
The frog held up his pinky.
Then we'll make a promise. No backing out.
After the frog and the princess shook pinkies, the frog dove into the small pond. After a while, he surfaced, carrying the golden ball in his mouth. He spat it onto the grass beside the pond. The princess couldn't have been happier when she saw her beloved golden ball. She picked it up, then turned and ran off.
Quack! Don't run! Wait!
The frog shouted.
Wait! Take me with you! I can't run that fast!
But the frog's desperate shouting was no use. The princess just ignored him and ran straight back to the palace. Before long, she forgot all about the poor frog. The frog had no choice but to return to the little pond. The next day, as the princess sat at the dinner table eating chicken drumsticks from her golden plate and drinking juice from a big goblet, there was suddenly a plop, plop sound outside the palace. she heard something jump up the marble steps. It reached the door. Then there was a loud knocking sound.
Open the door! Open the door, princess!
The princess rushed to the door to see who was calling her. When she opened the door, she saw that it was the frog she had met the day before, crouching at the door. When she saw the frog, she slammed the door shut and quickly turned and went back to her seat, terrified.
What can I do? The frog I met yesterday has come to the palace. What should I do?
The king was sitting beside her. Noticing how distraught the princess looked, he asked,
My princess, why are you so frightened? Who was at the door? It wasn't a terrible giant, was it?
But no matter how the king questioned her, the princess wouldn't tell him. The king went to the door, wanting to see who was there. When he opened it, he saw an ugly frog crouching there. The frog bowed to the king.
Your Majesty, I have come to see the princess. She promised to be my friend.
The frog told the king all that had happened at the pond the day before. The king invited the frog into the palace. Then he asked the princess,
Is everything the frog said true?
The princess nodded shyly.
Well, I did promise that if he got my golden ball for me, I would be friends with him. But, how can I be friends with an ugly frog?
The king shook his head and said,
How can you break your promise? Since you've made a promise to the frog, you must keep it.
The princess looked at the king, then at the frog, and said helplessly,
Fine. I'll be friends with the frog then.
The frog leaped onto the table and settled beside the princess.
Princess, now that we're friends, will you push your plate over a little so we can eat together?
The princess was reluctant to do so, but she pushed the golden plate over. The frog ate with great pleasure, but the princess didn't feel like eating anymore. After a while, the frog spoke up again.
Burp! I've eaten enough. I'm a little sleepy now. Let's go rest. Please carry me to bed and cover me with your velvet quilt. I want to be warm and comfortable.
The princess didn't like the cold, slimy frog. When she heard that he was to be covered with her own velvet quilt, she was on the verge of tears. When the king saw the princess's state of mind, he shook his head and said to her,
The frog helped you when you were in trouble. How can you despise him now? Be a good friend to the frog.
The princess wrapped the frog in her skirt and carried him upstairs. After thinking about it, she put the frog in a corner of her bedroom, then climbed into bed. Just as she settled in, the frog jumped to the side of the bed and said,
Princess, I don't want to sleep on the cold floor. I want to sleep on a soft bed, wrapped in a velvet quilt. Please, put me on the bed. I want to be tucked into bed and kissed goodnight.
The princess was reluctant, but she was afraid the king would be angry if she left the frog on the cold floor. So she put him on the bed.
You have to promise you'll go right to sleep if I tuck you in and kiss you goodnight.
The frog nodded his head eagerly. The princess lowered her head and stiffly kissed the frog on his slimy head. There was a puff of white smoke, and the frog began to shake violently. Frightened, the princess backed away. The frog grew bigger and bigger and bigger until it was finally as big as a hot air balloon. A burst of colorful light wrapped itself around the frog's body, and the frog flew high into the sky. The princess's jaw dropped open in surprise. Boom! The frog's front leg turned into hands. Boom, boom! Its back legs turned into long, slender legs. Boom, boom, boom! The frog turned into a handsome prince. The prince floated down and stood in front of the princess.
This is great! I finally changed back. Thank you, princess. I'm a prince from a neighboring country. I was enchanted by a witch and turned into a frog. Only your kiss could help me undo the magic.
The princess was shocked that the ugly frog turned into a handsome prince, and she was a little embarrassed by how badly she had treated him when he was a frog. The princess apologized to the prince.
I'm sorry I was so mean to you before, and that I didn't keep my promise.
The prince laughed loudly.
Don't worry about it. You saved me. You're my rescuer.
After that, the prince and princess became the best of friends. They played with the golden ball together, and they rode horses together. They were very happy. When they were older, they even fell in love, and they held a grand wedding.